The morning sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse office, casting long shadows across the polished hardwood floors. Marcus Ashford stood at his desk, reviewing quarterly reports with the same precise attention he brought to everything in his life. At 38, he had built his technology company from nothing into an empire, and he maintained that empire through discipline, focus, and an unwavering schedule. The penthouse was quiet, as it always was during his morning work hours. His daughter Emma was at preschool. His wife Catherine was at her art gallery downtown. The household staff moved through their duties with practiced silence, understanding that Maid Ashford valued his concentration above all else. Marcus had just begun drafting an email to his board of directors when he heard it. A smile, heartbroken sob echoing from somewhere in the apartment. He paused, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. Another sob followed, then another, each one carrying the particular devastation that only a child's cry could hold. He stood from his desk, something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. The sound was coming from the living area, near the service hallway. Marcus walked toward it, his Italian leather shoes silent on the floor. There, sitting cross-legged on the carpet near the entrance to the staff quarters, was a little girl he recognized as Sophia. She was perhaps 4 years old, wearing a simple yellow dress with small white flowers. Her dark curls fell around her face as she bent over something in her lap, and her small shoulders shook with quiet sobs. Marcus had seen Sophia before, of course. She was the daughter of Maria Santos, his head housekeeper. Maria had worked for the Ashford family for 3 years, and occasionally she brought Sophia to work when childcare arrangements fell through. The little girl was usually so quiet that Marcus barely noticed her presence. But now, standing a few feet away, he couldn't ignore the raw grief in her crying. "Sophia," he said gently, crouching down to her level. "What's wrong?" The little girl looked up, her brown eyes wide and brimming with tears. She quickly wiped at her face with the back of her hand, clearly frightened to be caught crying by the master of the house. "I'm sorry, Maid Ashford," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean to be loud." "You're not in trouble," Marcus assured her, surprised by the softness in his own voice. "But why are you crying? Are you hurt?" Sophia shook her head, then slowly held up what she'd been clutching in her lap. It was a wooden toy bear, handcrafted and weathered with age. One of its arms had broken clean off, and the little girl held both pieces as if they were precious treasures. "My bear," she said, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "He's broken. He dropped him, and now he's broken." Marcus looked at the toy more closely. It wasn't like the expensive, pristine toys that filled Emma's playroom upstairs. This bear had been loved thoroughly, its wood smoothed by countless hours of holding, its painted features faded from years of play. This was a toy that mattered. "This bear is important to you," Marcus observed, settling more comfortably on the floor beside her. Sophia nodded earnestly. "My papa made him for me. Before he went to heaven. Mama says Papa made him with special love, so I would always remember him." Her lower lip trembled. "But now I broke him, and Papa can't fix him anymore." The words hit Marcus harder than he expected. He thought of his own daughter, Emma, and how she had everything a child could want. But this little girl had something Emma didn't, a handmade treasure from a father who was gone. And now that treasure was broken. "May I see him?" Marcus asked gently. Sophia hesitated, then carefully placed both pieces in his outstretched hands. Marcus examined the break. It was clean, recent. The wood was solid pine, carved with obvious care and skill. He could see where Sophia's father had smoothed every edge, had painted the bear's kind face with steady, loving strokes. At that moment, Maria appeared from the service hallway, her eyes widening when she saw her daughter sitting on the floor with Maid Ashford. "Sophia," she said sharply, hurrying forward. "I told you to stay in the break room." "Maid Ashford, I'm so sorry. She won't disturb you again." "Maria," Marcus interrupted, standing slowly. "It's all right. Sophia and I are just talking about her bear." Maria's face was flushed with worry. "She knows better than to bother you during work hours." "Come, Sophia, let's go. But Marcus held up his hand. Actually, I was wondering if you might allow me to try something. He looked down at the broken bear in his hands. I'd like to fix this, if you'll trust me with it. Maria blinked in surprise. Sophia's tear-stained face lit up with fragile hope. You can fix him, the little girl asked. I think so, Marcus said. But I'll need to take him to my workshop. Can you be patient while I try? Sophia nodded vigorously, wiping the last of her tears away. Marcus carried the bear to his study, a room that few people ever entered. Behind the panel in the wall was something even fewer people knew existed, a small workshop where Marcus spent his rare free hours working with his hands. It was a hobby from his youth, one he'd never fully abandoned despite his demanding career. He set the bear carefully on his workbench and examined the break under a bright light. The arm could be reattached. But as Marcus looked more closely at the entire toy, he noticed other small damages, loose joints, a crack in the base, worn spots where the paint had chipped away. An idea formed in his mind. Not just a repair, but a restoration. For the next 3 hours, Marcus worked with a concentration he usually reserved for billion-dollar deals. He reattached the arm with wood glue and tiny pins, reinforcing the joint to make it stronger than before. He stabilized the loose joints, filled the crack with wood filler, sanded it smooth until it disappeared. He mixed paints until he matched the original colors exactly, then carefully retouched the worn spots. Finally, he applied a thin coat of clear finish to protect the wood, bringing out the golden warmth of the pine. When he emerged from his study, he found Maria in the kitchen preparing lunch. Sophia sat at the small staff table, drawing pictures with crayons Maria had brought from home. Sophia, Marcus said quietly. I have someone who wants to see you. The little girl jumped up from her chair and ran to him, her eyes fixed on the bear he held. It looked almost new, yet retained all the character and love that her father had carved into it. Papa's bear, she cried, taking it carefully in both hands. She examined it from every angle, her face glowing with joy. The arm was perfectly attached, moving smoothly at the joint. The worn spots were touched up. He's all better. It's perfect. Your papa was a very talented craftsman, Marcus said, crouching down again. He made this with great skill and great love. It shows in every detail. Sophia threw her arms around Marcus's neck in an impulsive hug. Thank you, for. Thank you for fixing Papa's bear. Marcus found himself returning the embrace, this spontaneous gesture from a child who had so little but gave so freely. When he looked up, he saw Maria with tears in her eyes. Thank you, Sir, she said softly. You didn't have to do that. Her father, he died 2 years ago. That bear is all she has from him. Then it deserved to be properly cared for, Marcus replied. That evening, when Emma came home from preschool, Marcus met her in the foyer. His daughter ran to him as she always did, chattering about her day. But this time, Marcus didn't just listen with half his attention while checking his phone. He picked her up, held her close, and listened to every word. Later, after Emma was in bed, Marcus stood at the window of his study, looking out over the city lights. He thought about a little girl's tears over a broken toy, and how fixing that one simple thing had somehow mattered more than any deal he'd closed that day. He thought about the things money could buy, and the things it couldn't. About handcrafted bears and absent fathers. About his own daughter, and the memories he was creating with her, or failing to create, with every busy day that passed. Marcus turned from the window and made a decision. Tomorrow, he would clear his afternoon schedule. He would pick Emma up from school himself. Maybe they would stop for ice cream, or visit the park. Maybe he would start teaching her how to work with wood, the way his own father had taught him years ago. The quarterly reports could wait. So many things, Marcus was finally learning, were more important than empire building. And sometimes the most valuable lesson came from a child's tears and a broken wooden bear.